I cut the cord with that knife, and minutes later, I drove it into her father's shoulder to stop him from drowning our newborn. He called her a curse. I made sure his screams were the last prayer the creek heard. They say I ran away. But I didn't run. I fought, then fled with blood on my hands and my baby gasping for breath. My husband, Matthew Coulter, tried to drown our newborn daughter in the creek behind our cabin. She wasn't even an hour old. A girl? He'd spat, like the word itself was poison. This ain't God's will. His face twisted into something cruel, something I'd never seen before, and then he took her, just took her, and walked out the door. I grabbed the knife I'd used to cut her cord and followed, barefoot and bleeding. When I found him at the water's edge, her tiny body already under, I didn't think. I drove that blade into his shoulder, pulled her from the icy creek, and ran into the dark. I was weak, still bleeding, barely able to sit up. I'd tried to reason with him, my voice hoarse. "Matthew, please. She's our daughter. She's a blessing." He'd just laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. A blessing? She's a curse. Another mouth to feed, another burden. I won't have it. Then he'd snatched her from my arms. I screamed, a raw, tearing sound, but he was already out the door, heading for the creek. I don't know where the strength came from. Maybe it was the animal rage of a mother, or just plain terror. I grabbed the hunting knife, the one I'd used to cut her cord, the one still stained with the effort of her birth, and stumbled after him. I found him by the water's edge, our tiny baby girl submerged, her little face already turning a dreadful blue. "Matthew, no!" I shrieked, but he didn't even look at me, he just held her down. Something snapped. It was like watching someone else. I lunged, screaming his name, and plunged that knife deep into his shoulder. He roared, a sound of pure animal fury, and dropped our baby into the shallow, muddy water. I scrambled, snatching her up, her little body limp and cold. For a horrifying moment, I thought she was gone. Then, a tiny, choked gasp, and a weak, shuddering cry. Matthew was clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers, his eyes blazing with a murderous light. You crazy bitch! You'll pay for this!" I didn't wait. I turned and ran, clutching my baby to my chest. I ran into the biting Dakota night, barefoot and bleeding from a gash on my arm where he'd struck me in the cabin. The door slammed shut behind me like a coffin lid. I had nothing. No food, no water, not even a decent blanket for her. Just the clothes on my back, a wailing infant, and the image of Matthew's hate-filled face burned into my memory. The wind howled like a banshee, and every shadow seemed to hold a new terror. The first few days were a living hell. I was out of my mind with fear and pain. My arm throbbed, my milk was slow and thin, and the baby, I hadn't even had the heart to name her yet, cried almost constantly from hunger and cold. I stumbled across the empty plains, the sun a cruel eye in the sky by day, the frost a sharp bite at night. I found a hollow beneath a rocky outcrop, a miserable shelter, but at least it broke the wind a little. I remember huddling there, rocking her, whispering, "I'm so sorry, little one. I'm so sorry." Mama tried. I was sure we were going to die out there, 2 more sets of bones for the prairie to claim. One evening, as the sun bled orange and purple across the horizon, I heard a rustle. My heart leaped into my throat. Coyotes? Or worse, men. I clutched the baby tighter, my fingers fumbling for the rusted blade I'd tucked into my skirt, the same one I'd used on Matthew. It felt like a pitiful defense. Then he stepped into the dim light, tall, lean, silent as a shadow. He wore a long deerskin coat, and his face, marked with faint traces of old war paint, was hard to read. Feathers were braided into his dark hair. He wasn't like any white man I'd ever seen. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I expected a tomahawk, a quick end, but he just looked at us, his dark eyes taking in my ragged state, the crying child. He moved slowly, deliberately, and crouched down a few feet away. His gaze wasn't malicious, more curious. After a long moment he spoke, his English rough but clear. "Baby hungry." I just nodded, tears pricking my eyes. My voice was a dry rasp. I have nothing left. He didn't say anything more then. He simply turned and, with an efficiency that amazed me, built a small fire from dry moss and flint. He pulled some dried roots from a pouch at his belt and gestured for me to drink the bitter tea he made with them in a small tin cup he carried. It was earthy and strange, but it warmed me from the inside. He then offered me a piece of dried meat, tough but life-giving. And soon, miraculously, the baby latched on, her tiny mouth working desperately, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she was quiet, suckling weakly. I started to cry then, not loud, just silent tears rolling down my dirty cheeks. Relief, shame, exhaustion, it all poured out. He just sat there, tending the fire, giving me space. He didn't ask about the dried blood on my dress or the wild terror in my eyes. When I finally quieted, he gestured with his chin. Follow. Morning. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know if I could trust him. But what choice did I have? Go back to Matthew? Die out here alone? So, when the first pale light of dawn touched the plains, I gathered my baby, now wrapped in a piece of his spare blanket, and I followed him. His name, I learned later, was Tahu. The journey was brutal. The Dakota Territory in late fall is no place for a woman alone with a newborn, let alone one as broken as I was. But Tahu knew the land. He moved with a quiet grace, his long strides never faltering. He found water where I saw only cracked earth, shelter where I saw only exposure. He taught me, slowly, patiently, what plants were safe to eat, how to read the signs in the dirt, how to listen to the wind for warnings. He'd point to a bird, a track, a shift in the clouds, and in a few sparse words, explain its meaning. He never pried. He never asked about my past, about the husband I'd clearly fled. There was a deep well of sorrow in his own eyes, a quiet understanding of pain that needed no words. We walked for days, maybe a week. My feet were raw, my body ached with a weariness that went bone deep, but I kept going. For her, my little Rose. I'd finally named her, a fragile bloom in a harsh wilderness. It was my mother's name, a small piece of home I could carry with me. One evening, Rose started fussing, a thin, colicky wail that tore at my heart. She'd been doing it more and more, and I was beside myself with worry. Her little belly would get tight, and she'd arch her back. I tried everything I knew, which wasn't much. Tahu watched us for a while, his expression unreadable. Then he disappeared into the dusk and returned with a handful of specific leaves. He crushed them, mixed them with a little warm water, and very gently, using his finger, dabbed a tiny bit onto Rose's tongue. Good for belly, he said. Within minutes, her crying softened, and she drifted off to a more peaceful sleep. I looked at him with a gratitude too deep for words. He led me to a small, hidden grove nestled by a clear, fast-flowing river. The trees whispered secrets in the wind, and the land felt different, less cursed somehow. There was an old shelter there, cleverly woven from branches and hides, with a stone fire pit at its center. It was small, but it was protection. This was my father's place, Tahu said one evening, his voice unusually soft as he stared into the flames. Long ago, before the war took everything. I didn't ask what war. I'd seen the scars of war on too many men back in Tennessee. Every man, it seemed, carried his own battles, his own ghosts. Under his patient guidance, I learned more. How to set snares for rabbits and squirrels, how to fish with a simple line and hook, how to skin and prepare game, how to build a proper fire that wouldn't waste wood or send up too much smoke. My hands, once soft, grew calloused and capable. The dirt under my nails became a badge of survival. Rose, bless her, started to thrive. Her cheeks filled out, her cries became more robust, and her eyes, bright and curious, followed my every move. And sometimes, When Tahu was out hunting, I'd hold her close and whisper promises. You'll never be unwanted, my sweet girl. Never. I'll make sure of it. Slowly, haltingly, I began to laugh again. Small, rusty sounds at first, as if I was unsure if joy was still allowed in my world. Tahu would sometimes watch me with a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. Our silences were comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. He taught me to use a bow he'd fashioned from a strong ash limb, stringing it with sinew. The land provides, he told me, his hands guiding mine as I struggled to draw the string. But you must be still. Listen, the arrow knows where to go if you let it. My fingers blistered, my shoulders ached, but I persisted. I had to. For Rose. For myself. By the time Rose could walk steady, she was already more in tune with the land than most grown men I'd known. She had this way of watching things, like she was listening to secrets the rest of us couldn't hear. Always barefoot, always moving, always touching everything like her little fingers could read the world. One morning, she sat real quiet by the fire, holding a pine cone in both hands like it was a treasure. Then she looked up at the sky, tilted her head, and said in that sing-song way toddlers talk, "Big noisy bird fall down." I was half awake, trying to boil what little root tea we had left, and I just laughed soft. "That's so, baby girl? A bird fallen from the sky?" She nodded hard, all serious. "Boom," she whispered. "Smoke. Hurt men." Later that day, a trader rolled through, Old Dutchy, skin like leather and beard full of pine needles. He sat down, wiped the dust from his brow, and said, "Y'all hear about that mail plane went down? Out past Thunder Creek, maybe 4 days back. Pilot didn't make it." My gut went cold. I didn't say nothing, just turned to look at Rose. She was picking at moss near the creek, humming to herself like none of it meant a thing. I told myself it was coincidence. Kids say strange things all the time, right? They see shadows in clouds, talk to trees. But a week later, it happened again. We were sitting by the river, her little feet splashing in the shallows. She stopped suddenly, looked downstream, and said, "Water angry." "What?" I blinked. "Why you say that?" She looked up at me, her mouth a straight line. "It's comin'. The water's mad." That night, the rains came hard, the kind that make the sky look split in two. By dawn, the river had swelled near twice its width. Trees uprooted, our smoke pit flooded. If we hadn't moved the camp up slope, we'd have been swept clear to the lowlands. Tahu didn't say much, but he stood real still after the flood, staring at Rose like he was seeing something sacred or dangerous. He crouched beside her later that evening, handed her a carved bird he'd whittled. "Why you know these things, little one?" She shrugged. "I just feel 'em." He turned to me then. No words, just that look in his eyes, quiet, deep, searching. Like he was asking if I'd given birth to a prophet or a curse. I didn't have the answer. Still don't. But I started watching closer. When Rose got real still, I'd hold my breath. When she cried for no reason, I'd scan the trees. Tahu took to smudging camp more often, burning cedar and sage, whispering old words under his breath. He never told me what they meant. Maybe he didn't know either. Once, I found Rose out near the bluff at sunrise, her hands held out wide, eyes closed, whispering something to the wind. When I called her name, she turned and smiled, like she'd just finished a conversation with someone who wasn't there. That night, I asked Tahu if he'd ever seen anything like it before. He sat quiet for a while, sharpening his blade slow. In my village, long ago, there was a boy. He saw things too, heard spirits. Folks were afraid of him, called him touched. What happened to him? Tahu didn't look up. He stopped speaking one day, vanished into the hills. They say the mountain took him back. My chest tightened. "Do you think she's like that boy?" "I think," he said, wiping the blade clean. The world don't treat people kindly when they don't fit in its stories. And ain't that the truth? Rose was only 3, but something about her felt old. Not tired, just ancient, like she came with memories that weren't hers. She'd sit in my lap sometimes and hum melodies I swear I never taught her, looking out at the fire like it was showing her things I couldn't see. Sometimes I wondered if I'd saved her from Matthew, only to raise a child the world would call witch. But then she'd laugh, and all that weight in my chest would melt. She was just a girl. My girl. And whatever she had in her bones, magic or madness, I'd fight the whole world to protect it, even if it scared the hell out of me. Our peaceful existence, however, was as fragile as a butterfly's wing. Peace in the West is a fickle visitor. The man burst out of the cedars like a rag doll caught in a breeze. Sun had baked his skin to cracked clay, and every step looked like pain. He tasted the air, saw the rabbit roasting, and near fell to his knees. Tehu muttered, "Starving," then eased forward, offering a cup of creek water. The stranger drained it, wiped his mouth with a trembling hand. Sweet mercy. Thought I'd meet buzzards 'fore I met folks. We sliced cornbread, handed him roots and meat. He chewed fast, eyes darting between us, me, the bow on the ground, Rose stacking stones by the river. I asked, "You lost?" He coughed, swallowed hard. Devil's Ridge chewed up my mule. Survey crew left me for dead when the pay ran out. Survey, huh? Rails? That's the dream. Steel to the horizon. He laughed, tired and small. Dreams die slow out here. He noticed the bow, the way the sinew glimmered. Never seen a woman draw with that kind of muscle. I trust the rabbit, kept my voice flat. Women bleed same as men, only fair we fight same as men. He rummaged in his satchel, pulled out a brass-lensed camera. Mind if I take your likeness? Real frontier marvel? Folks back east'll eat it up. My gut clenched. Attention meant footprints. But Tahu gave a slow nod. Maybe mercy for a broken man. Maybe a misstep. I stood by the pines. Rose peeked from behind my skirts, thumb in her mouth. The shutter snapped, powder smoke curling up like a bad omen. He thanked us, tipped his hat, limped off into the trees. Weeks later, Dutchy the trader unfolded a leaflet beside our fire. My own face stared back, hair wild, bow lifted, child at hip. Hot off the presses, he said, tapping the headline, "The Warrior Woman of the Wilds." My stomach dropped. Where'd you get that? Every saloon from here to Bismarck. Print shop in Yankton's running 'em 2 cents a stack. Tahu studied it, jaw tight. Stories travel faster than bullets. More papers drifted in. Savage Queen of Dakota, Runaway Bride of Blood. The sketches grew uglier, the bounty rumors louder, and men began sniffing around the grove like wolves that had tasted lamb. The first pair showed near dusk, spurs jangling lazy songs. One nudged the other. Told you the story was true? Look at that bow. I stepped between them and Rose. Camp's private. The tall one grinned. We're just passing. Heard of a woman lives rough, figured we'd say howdy. Maybe collect a photograph, same as the papers. Tahu slid from the shadows, arrow knocked. Pictures cost blood. The second man's hand hovered over his revolver. Easy, Chief. We're friendly. Friendly men keep their irons covered, I said, voice low. Holster or leave. They glanced at each other, calculating. The tall one shrugged. Rain's comin'. We'll find a drier welcome upslope. They backed off, but I read the promise in their eyes. We'll be back. That night, wind rattled the hides overhead. Tahu sharpened his knife, sparks popping into the dark. They don't see you, he said. They see a legend they want to tame. I watched Rose sleep, thumb still by her lips. Legends get people killed. Only if legends hide, he muttered, drawing the stone down the blade again. 2 mornings later, boot prints ringed our snare line, deliberate, taunting circles. A rabbit gutted, left hanging like a warning. I tasted bile. Tahu traced the tracks with a fingertip. Same men. Maybe more now. What happens when they come again? He stood, eyes on the horizon. Then we show them the story's true. They returned at sundown, 5 this time, liquor brave and hungry for coin. One called out, "Evenin', Mrs. Legend. Marshal down and Yankton's paying top dollar for proof you're alive. Step quiet and nobody bleeds." Rose clutched my skirt. I pushed her behind a fallen pine, whispered, "Count to 30, then crawl to the river hollow." She nodded, eyes wide. I stepped into view, bow raised. "Proof's expensive. You sure you can afford it?" Laughter rippled. The leader spat. "Heard you gutted your own husband. I doubt you'll drop 5 of us." "Try me." I drew. Chaos cracked like dry timber. Tahu's first arrow pinned a man's sleeve to an elm, second buried in his thigh. Gunfire answered, splinters spraying. I loosed twice. One shaft split a revolver from its owner's grip, the other kissed leather near the leader's heart. He roared, rushed me. I rolled, came up slicing with the skinning knife. Steel met flesh, red blossomed. He staggered, swung wild. A bullet screamed past my ear, burned like hell. Tahu ghosted behind the shooter, clubbed him down with his bow stave. 3 remained, nerves unraveling. One shouted, "She's a damn demon!" and bolted. The last 2 backed toward the trees. "This ain't worth it." I kept the bow trained. "Drop your guns and crawl." They obeyed, faces gray with fear, slinking into the underbrush weaponless. Wind carried their curses away. When the echoes died, Rose crawled from the hollow, sobbing breathless. I gathered her close. My hands shook harder than hers. Blood, his, not mine, streaked my sleeve. Tahu checked the leader, now whimpering against the pine. Arrows clean through the meat. He'll live if he rides fast. The man spat weakly. "You'll hang for this. They'll pay more now." I knelt beside him, pressed the arrow deeper just enough to make him howl. "Tell the marshal the story's true. Tell him next time we won't be merciful." We bound his wound, set him on his horse, slapped the rump. He vanished into the dusk, moaning prayers. Later, firelight flickered across Tahu's face. "They'll come harder." I stared into the flames. "Let them. I'm done hiding. If a legend's what they want, I'll give 'em one they won't forget." Rose slid into my lap, heartbeat still racing. "Mama's brave," she whispered. I kissed the crown of her head, tasted smoke and salt. Brave? No, just cornered. And a cornered mother is the most dangerous thing on the prairie. The wind shifted, carrying distant thunder. Maybe a storm, maybe riders. Either way, I tightened my grip on the bowstring, feeling the weight of every choice that led me here. Ain't no turning back from legend now, only carving truth from the lies, arrow by arrow, bone by bone. The night started feeling tighter somehow, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Even the fire snapped quieter. That kind of silence ain't peace. It's a warning. Tahu didn't say much, but he moved camp deeper into the grove. Cleared a new trail only he and I could read. Taught me how to scatter our prints with pine needles, how to weave traps out of sapling bows and wire. Not to hunt rabbits this time, but men. Every lesson he gave felt heavier, not survival, preparation. For a siege, for a war. Even Rose started changing. She'd wake with her cheeks slick and her fists balled tight in the blanket. Wouldn't talk much in the mornings. Just stare at the smoke curling from our little fire and whisper, "Loud sticks. They're comin' soon." One night, she whispered something that near split me open. "Mama," she said, still half in dream. "The trees cry when the fire eats them. I heard them scream." I sat awake till dawn after that, knife in hand, eyes on the shadows. We found the boot prints 3 days later, right near the creek where we draw water. Weren't animals, weren't lost travelers. Too clean, too damn many. Tahu crouched low, running his fingers along the edge of a print. "Heavy, man. Carried weight here. See this?" He tapped the impression. Boot heel deeper on the right. Means he's favoring a leg. Old injury, maybe. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. You think it's him? Tahu didn't look up. I know it is. I knew too. Matthew. That night, the wind turned sharp, carrying the scent of ash. Our fire was barely embers. Tahu sat across from me, knife in one hand, whetstone in the other, dragging it slow and steady like he was wetting down time itself. He didn't lift his eyes when he said it. Your man. He'll come. Won't be alone. Won't be fast. He'll wait. Circle. Corner. My chest tightened like a vice. He sees me as his. Something he lost. Not someone who left. Tahu's eyes flicked up, dark and calm like a river, just before it breaks its banks. Not lost. Stolen. That's worse to a man like him. I looked over at Rose. Curled up in the furs, her small chest rising steady now. Hair all tangled, thumb tucked under her chin. Still just a child. But even in sleep, her brow twitched like she was fighting something I couldn't see. Then he'll have to kill me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Because I ain't ever going back, and he won't touch her. Tahu set the knife down, looked at me hard. You understand what you're saying, Eliza? This ain't scaring off drunkards anymore. This is blood. This is war. I held his stare. Then it's war. He gave one slow nod. Then we fight. We packed that night. Quiet, efficient, no wasted movement. Tahu buried old supplies, laid false trails. I sewed pockets into my skirts to keep spare blades. Strapped a skinning knife to the inside of my boot. The next morning, Rose handed me her little wooden horse, one Tahu had carved when she was teething. Keep it, Mama, she said, serious as death. He'll try to trick you. Don't listen to his voice. I knelt, held her tight. I won't. I promise. But deep down, I wasn't sure. Matthew always knew where to strike. With fists, with lies, with guilt. He wouldn't come charging in like some dime novel villain. No. He'd get close, twist the knife slow. He wanted me to beg, to break, and I'd be damned if I let him. Tahu kept saying it plain. A man like that don't want you back. He wants you small. Well, I'd already buried the girl who used to fold her hands and say sorry just to survive. She was gone. What was left was something else entirely. The air felt different that day. Still. Waiting. Even the birds seemed to quiet down. Rose woke from her nap and whispered, They're in the trees now. I reached for the bow. My hands didn't shake. Sometimes the only way out is through. Through fire. Through fear. Through the man who thinks he still owns your soul. Let him come. I was ready. Flames leapt from the treetops like crazed stallions, popping pine cones into grenades. Smoke rolled through the grove, thick as tar, swallowing moonlight until every shadow looked like a gunman. Tahu's voice cut through the roar. Hold the east line! They'll rush the creek next. I knocked an arrow, sighted on a shape darting between cedars. The shaft thudded into a chest. The man folded without a cry. My hands barely shook. Funny how terror turns steady when your child's breaths are on the scale. A bellow rose from downhill. Matthew's rasp, hoarse, furious. Burn it to the roots, smoke the witch out. Torchbearers charged, waving brands that spewed sparks over dry needles. The nearest lobbed his torch toward our roof of woven boughs. I loosed again. The arrow pinned his sleeve to an oak. He shrieked, flailed, set himself alight. One torch still sailed. Tahu vaulted a stump, caught it mid-arc, flipped it harmless into the creek with a hiss. He shot me a quick grin, strange, calm, fearless. Then the brute appeared, scar down his cheek, heavier than a bull. He barreled through smoke, shoulder first, smashed my bow aside. Wood cracked. I stumbled, air driven from my lungs. He laughed, sour breath in my face. Thought you'd be taller. I spat blood. Thought you'd be smarter. We grappled, feet slipping in ash. He wrenched a fistful of my hair, yanked back. Pain flashed white. I rammed a knee into his groin. He grunted, loosened grip just enough for me to snatch the smoldering branch by my boot. His eyes widened. "Don't!" I swung. The embered end slammed his temple, sparks bursting like fireflies. He sagged, knees buckling. I slammed again, thunk, until his body went slack and the branch fizzled out in dust. Crack of rifle off to my right. Winona's shotgun booming from the ridge. A rider toppled, horse screaming as it crashed through underbrush. Another arrow whistled past my ear, Tahu chasing targets through the haze. But the fire was winning. Our hide tent smoked. Sparks curled under the eaves. I kicked burning moss away from the stores, coughing hard. "Waterline!" I shouted. A young settler, Tom's niece Annie, skidded in with 2 buckets. "Creek's boiling, but we'll douse what we can." She heaved water over the blazing cedar wall. Steam shrieked, but the fire only hissed and renewed. A bullet tore bark inches from Annie's head. She froze. "I can't. Down!" I yanked her behind a log, loosed my last arrow toward the muzzle flash. Silence after. Either I'd hit him or he'd learned manners. Thunder of hoofbeats. Matthew burst into view astride a black gelding, leg bandaged thick, but blood seeping through. His eyes gleamed wild in the firelight. He pointed a revolver at me. "You should have died with my brother, Eliza." "Your brother died drunk on his own cruelty," I spat. "You're halfway there." He cocked the hammer. End of the legend. His finger tightened. A streak of shadow. Tahu lunged from the smoke, tomahawk spinning. Steel kissed Matthew's wrist. The shot went high, shredding a branch. The gun clattered. Matthew reared, tried to wheel, but Winona's slug caught the horse's haunch. Beast screamed, bucked. Matthew hit the dirt with a crunch. I closed in, heart hammering. Matthew clawed for his knife, but Tahu planted a boot on the man's elbow, forced the blade loose. Winona stalked up, gun smoking. Matthew's eyes darted. Fear now. "Won't kill me in cold blood. You ain't like me." I drew the skinning knife, the same one that had opened his shoulder the night I ran. "No," I said, voice low. "I'm worse. I remember mercy." I slashed the belt, the bandage, cut him free of weapons, left the wound bleeding. "Drag him," I ordered Winona. "Let his own men haul him out." She hauled him by the collar toward the creek bank, dumped him beside 2 moaning riders. "Take your devil with you," she growled. They scrambled, half crawling, half dragging Matthew to the last unspooked horse. He glared back through the smoke. "This ain't done." Tahu notched another arrow. "Ride slow. Gives the prairie more time to think." They vanished into the tree line, curses trailing like wounded coyotes. Silence settled, broken only by crackling timber. We raced along the perimeter, stamping embers, tossing buckets till our arms shook. By dawn, the grove smoldered but stood. I hurried to the cave mouth, heart thudding. "Rose?" Tiny footsteps. She ran into my arms, eyes red but dry. "Dream was wrong," she whispered. "Fire came, but the trees didn't all die." I kissed her soot-streaked hair. "Dreams warn, baby. They don't decide." Behind us, the survivors gathered. Annie, her hands blistered. Tom holding a torn sleeve to his bleeding shoulder. Winona wiping soot from her cheek. Tahu watching the tree line in case Fury doubled back. I scanned the charred shelters, the black scars on cedar trunks, and felt a heaviness settle. We'd won the night, but the cost? Sleep gone. Safe walls gone. Childhood innocence for Rose, maybe gone too. I met Tahu's eyes. "He'll heal fast enough to return." He nodded, voice gravel soft. Next time, we ended at the root. Winona stepped forward, touched the dried blood on her sleeve. And until then, we rebuild. Stronger. Fireproof roofs, watchposts in the ridges. Tom groaned, but grinned. "Guess my retirement's postponed." Annie raised a shaky hand. "I'll help. Folks back east said I was useless. Looks like I'm fire brigade now. Hope flickered, stubborn as a candle in wind. I squeezed Rose tighter. All right then. We seed new trees tomorrow. Teach every soul here to string a bow. And if Matthew tries again... Winona finished for me, eyes blazing. The prairie'll claim what the flames couldn't. Morning light crept over the ruined grove, painting ash silver. Somewhere in the singed branches a sparrow chirped, single note, defiant. I straightened, tasted smoke, sweat, iron, and something else, something like victory, raw and aching. Legend or not, we were still standing. And sometimes, on the frontier, that was the loudest story you could tell. We didn't rejoice. There was no victory in such bloodshed, just a grim determination. He'll be back, I said to Tahu as we surveyed the damage. My voice was flat, weary. Yes, Tahu agreed. Men like him, their hate burns hotter than any fire. We knew we couldn't stay. The legend, Matthew's relentless pursuit, it made this place a trap. So we packed what little we had salvaged and moved on, deeper into the unmapped territories, searching for a place where we could truly disappear. We traveled for weeks, through rugged mountains and across desolate plains. Rose, now old enough to understand some of our hardships, was quiet and observant, her prophetic dreams becoming a strange, unsettling guide. She'd point and say, "No go there, Mama, bad rocks fall." And sure enough, we'd find a recent rock slide. Or, water sleeps there. And Tahu would find a hidden spring. He treated her pronouncements with a quiet respect, a gravity that acknowledged their truth. I was still unnerved, but also grateful. Her strange gift was helping keep us alive. Eventually, we found a hidden valley, a place of breathtaking beauty, watered by a clear stream, surrounded by tall pines that seemed to touch the sky. It felt untouched, safe. Here, we decided, we would try to build a life again. We called it Hollow Creek, after the place where I'd first found a sliver of peace. Others found their way to us over time. Runaways, widows, men broken by war, families looking for a fresh start away from the encroaching civilization that often felt more savage than the wilderness. Some had heard the lingering stories of the warrior woman and the Sioux man who walked beside her. We didn't turn them away if their eyes were honest and their hands willing to work. Hollow Creek grew, slowly, organically, into a small, self-sufficient community. It wasn't a town, not really. More like a refuge. Tahu and I, our bond deepened. There were no declarations, no grand pronouncements. Our love was a quiet thing, woven into the fabric of our shared lives, in the way we worked together, in the way his hand would find mine in the quiet of the evening, in the way we raised Rose as our own. He was my anchor, my strength, the calm center of my often stormy world. Then, one crisp autumn day, when Rose was about 10, a figure emerged from the forest at the edge of our settlement. A woman. Sioux, by her dress and bearing. She was young, perhaps in her late teens or early 20s, her face etched with a hardness that belied her years, her eyes holding a deep, simmering resentment. She walked straight to our cabin and asked for Tahu by name. When Tahu saw her, he stopped dead in his tracks. The color drained from his face. His usual stoic composure shattered, replaced by an expression of utter disbelief, then a dawning, agonizing hope. "Winona?" he whispered, his voice choked, barely audible. "Is it truly you?" The young woman's lip curled. "You remember me then, Father?" Her voice was cold, laced with a bitterness that cut through the crisp air. She was his daughter. The daughter he believed had perished years ago, along with his wife, during a brutal army raid on their village. He's spoken of them only once, his voice thick with a grief so profound it had left me speechless. And now, here she was, alive, standing before him. But this was no joyful reunion. Winona's eyes, when they fell on me, were like chips of ice. I was the white woman who stood beside her father, the woman who had clearly taken her mother's place. Her hostility was a palpable thing, a suffocating blanket over our fragile peace. She'd barely acknowledge my presence, and when she did, her words were clipped, barbed. "So this is who you share your fire with now?" she'd said to Tahu one evening, loud enough for me to hear, her gaze sweeping over me with contempt. "Have you forgotten your own blood so easily?" Tahu was torn. The joy of finding his daughter alive was immense, but it was tainted by her pain and her open disdain for me. He tried to bridge the gap, to explain, but Winona was a wall of hurt and anger. "She has suffered much, Eliza," he'd said to me later, his voice heavy. "Her path has been hard." Winona didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her silence cut sharper than a blade. Every look, every turn of her back when Rose tried to hand her a flower or ask a question, it was like she was saying, "You don't belong here," without speaking a word. I tried. Lord knows I tried. Sat by her during supper. Offered to mend her coat when the sleeve tore. Once even handed her the last strip of dried venison, hoping to thaw whatever froze between us. She took it. Didn't look at me. Didn't thank me. "You don't have to pretend," she said once, eyes fixed on the fire. "I know what this is." What is?" "You. This place. Him. You took it. All of it." She got up and walked off, leaving her bowl half full. I sat there a long time, staring at the embers like they owed me answers. Rose curled into my side later that night, whispering, "She doesn't like us, does she?" I brushed the hair from her forehead, trying to soften the truth. "She's hurting, baby. Folks who hurt sometimes push away the people trying to help." Rose shook her head. But I didn't do anything. And that right there, that's what tore me up. She hadn't. She was just a child, caught in the middle of someone else's storm. And I couldn't shield her from it. Winona looked at Rose like she was a splinter under the skin. Maybe she saw her as proof Tahu had moved on, that he'd replaced one family with another. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that there was room enough for all of us. But truth is, in places like Hollow Creek, peace is fragile. Real fragile. One sharp word can crack it wide open. And that crack, it was spreading. The riders showed up just after the spring thaw, their horses blowing clouds of steam in the crisp noon air. Steel badges winked beneath dusters, rifle butts glinted in sunlight. No laughter, no how do you do, just that hard, you owe us silence. Henderson swung from his saddle, boots hitting the ground like a judge's gavel. "Listen up," he barked, voice big enough to rattle the porch boards. "Territory marshal out of Granite Bluff. Got business with a man named Tahu." Murmurs rippled through the gathered families. Folks shifted, mothers tugged children close. I stepped forward, bow slung but unstrung, trying to look calm. Henderson flicked open a folded broadside, the damned sketch of me, wild-eyed, bow raised. "Seems your settlement's harboring trouble." My stomach turned to Riverstone. "What trouble, Marshal?" He shoved the paper toward my face. "You, and the man who helped you dodge your lawful husband." A sharp breath ran through the crowd. Tahu moved up beside me, eyes unreadable. Henderson squared his shoulders. "Charges: aiding and abetting fugitive Eliza Coulter, obstruction of lawful retrieval, possible homicide linked to Mr. Coulter's business partners. Warrant says bring him in, alive if practical." Winona loosened the knife at her hip. "That's a lie spun by dead men." Henderson's grin was all teeth. "Dead men still testify just fine when there's coin on the table." Before I could speak, Silas elbowed to the front. He smelled of stale whiskey and fresh cowardice. "Marshal, sir, Hollow Creek's peaceful folk. Nobody wants gunfire. Maybe there's a way to keep things civil." My voice cracked like ice. "Silas, shut your mouth." He wouldn't meet my eye. "Law's law, Eliza. Don't drag us into your quarrels." Henderson latched onto that weakness like a tick. "Wise man, step aside." Tahu's hand brushed mine, steady, deliberate. No need for blood today, he said to Henderson. I'll ride peaceful, answer your judge. Winona's jaw clenched. You owe them nothing. He gave a small shake of the head, that calm that always scared me more than anger. I owe this place peace, I whispered. They'll twist whatever you say. Then untwist it, he murmured back. Whatever happens, keep Rose safe. The marshal's men moved in, rifles leveled. They bound Tahu's wrists with rawhide. He didn't flinch. Rose let out a brittle cry from the porch. I knelt, pressed my palm to her cheek. Papa will be home, I lied, tasting the bitterness of it. Henderson tugged the reins. We'll sort him in Granite Bluff. Best you stay put, Mrs. Coulter. Territory frowns on fugitives wandering. They turned their horses, hooves pounded away, carrying my anchor into the pines. Silence flooded the clearing until every creak of saddle leather faded. Then the whispers started, fear-soaked, sharp. Martha the widow touched my sleeve. What are you going to do? I answered too loud, voice shaking. Bring him back. Silas scoffed. And paint a bigger target on us? I spun on him. You sold him out. His eyes darted like a trapped fox. I saved this settlement, laws bigger than any one man. Winona stepped up, blade gleaming. You call that saving? I call it gutless. Silas paled and backed off into the crowd, which suddenly found its feet too interesting to watch. I felt Rose slip her small hand in mine. Mama, the box is dark, she whispered. He's scared. Cold washed through me. Her visions had never been wrong. I faced the people, my people, voice rough. Anyone who thinks turning him over keeps you safe doesn't understand what's coming. That marshal's badge is bought with Matthew Coulter's money or worse. Martha nodded, eyes fierce. Tell us what you need. Others shuffled forward, some ashamed, some determined. Enough, maybe enough. Winona met my gaze. All that old anger was gone, smelted into something hard and bright. We ride tonight. Granite Bluff's a 2-day push, I said. They'll expect us. She tilted her chin. Then let's be unexpected. Night fell heavy. I laid out maps by lantern glow, old trapper trails, dry creek beds. Winona traced a finger along a ridgeline. They'll bed outside Sundown Pass. Henderson's too proud to sleep in the open, but horses need water, here. She tapped a bend in the river. Martha slid a shotgun onto the table. I can drive a wagon within 20 yards, claim I'm hauling furs, give you cover. Silas lingered in the doorway, shame weighing him down like wet wool. I mucked up, he muttered. My glare could have split timber. That the whole of it? I know a back route into the holding pens, he offered, voice brittle. Worked cattle drives there, could guide you. Rage warred with necessity. Finally, I nodded once. At dawn, you lead. Rose sat on the bunk, clutching her wooden horse. Her voice trembled. Hurry, Mama, the walls are crying louder. We set out under a sky scraped clean of stars, hooves muffled with burlap. Frost kissed the sedge. Breath fogged before our faces. Every mile felt like a question I couldn't answer. How many good people was I willing to risk for one? Winona rode beside me, dark braids whipping in the wind. You blame yourself, she said. He's shackled because of me. She shook her head. He chose. That's what love is. Choice. The simplicity of it cut deeper than pity. We reached the ridge by gray first light. Below, the marshal's camp huddled near the river. Canvas tent, cook fire, horses picketed, one guard pacing, too few men for the noise Henderson made. Arrogance again. Martha's wagon creaked down the trail, old boards rattling. She waved a wide hat, called out, Morning, boys, got pelts for Granite Bluff Market. The guard ambled over, rifle easy. Silas whispered, Back path's clear, and slipped into the scrub with Winona and me on his heels. We skirted brush, hearts hammering. Rose's warning rang in my ears, dark walls, crying. Suddenly a rough voice. Thought I smelled trouble. Henderson stepped from behind the holding pen, revolver leveled. He spat. Couldn't stay put, huh, legend? Winona lunged, knife flashing. A gunshot cracked. She spun, grazed along the ribs, blood blooming. I drew the bow, arrow knocked, but Henderson yanked Tahu forward, rawhide looped around his neck. One more step and I yank, he hissed. Tahu's hands were still bound, eyes calm despite the cord-biting flesh. Don't trade lives, he rasped. Blood roared in my ears. Was this the reckoning? My arrow wavered. Henderson sneered. Drop it, Savage Queen. Time slid slow, each breath a canyon. My fingers relaxed, bow drooping. Henderson's smirk widened. Then a boom split the dawn. Martha's shotgun. Buckshot tore Henderson's revolver hand to ribbons. He screamed, released the rawhide. Winona charged, slammed him to the ground, blade at his throat. I rushed to Tahu, cutting the bindings. You okay? He squeezed my wrist. Still breathing. Camp exploded in chaos, guards scrambling, horses rearing. Silas burst through the gate, shoving rifles into our hands. Told you I could get you in. Gunfire popped like hail. Winona dragged Henderson, bleeding and cursing, toward the river. She growled, You face our judge now. And for the first time since she rode into Hollow Creek, she looked at me not with hate, but with shared purpose. We bound the marshal, gathered his men's weapons, and rode out before the sun spilled fully over the rimrock. Behind us, the camp smoldered, tongues of smoke curling like the last whispers of a nightmare. On the trail home, Tahu rode in the wagon, arm draped around Rose, who leaned against him humming a lullaby only she seemed to know. Winona's shoulder pressed bloody but proud. Martha cackled every mile about, pepperin' that rooster's claw. I nudged my mare beside Silas. You earned your place back. He stared ahead, voice cracking. Didn't do it for place. Did it 'cause my conscience wouldn't let me sleep. Hold on to that, I said. Peace is built on men who lose sleep for the right reasons. Up ahead, Hollow Creek's rooftops caught the rising light, still standing. Maybe shaken, maybe cracked, but standing. And somewhere in that glow, I felt the legend shift. It wasn't just my face on paper anymore. It was every hand that had lifted a weapon beside mine, every heart that had chosen courage over comfort. Legend, I realized, is just the truth willed into the world by people too stubborn to surrender. Matthew's shadow still loomed, but right then the road felt open, the sky wide, and the future. Ours, to fight for. Winona's stare never wavered from the wanted poster. Sun-bleached paper, 5 ugly faces, reward scrawled in bold ink, 500 in gold, dead or alive. She tapped it again. That bounty's Henderson's ransom times 3. I hissed under my breath. Tahu would spit if he knew we were thinking of trading blood for coin. We're not trading, she shot back. We're reclaiming what he's worth. I scanned the street, miners shuffling past, gamblers hawking faro tables, whores laughing at a joke that wasn't funny. Red Rock smelled like desperation. Every eye felt like a weighing scale. What do you know about these Kogan boys? I asked. Stage robbery 2 weeks ago. Left one guard gut shot in the dust. Folks say they hole up in Devil's Canyons, maze of dry washes, rock chimneys, perfect for ambushes. And 500 gold means they won't go quiet. She gave a humorless grin. Neither do we. A thought cut through my fear. We'll need guns, ammo, fresh horses. Supplies cost coin we don't have. Someone in this town owes you favors? Her brows arched, half challenge, half hope. A face surfaced. Nate Holloway, an old Union medic turned apothecary, patched up by Tahu years back after a horse threw him. If he was still alive, he might front us powder. Stay close, I muttered. This street eats wanderers. Holloway's shop was a leaning shack of cedar planks and quinine fumes. Bottles lined the shelves like dusty soldiers. When he saw me, his leathery face cracked a grin. By thunder, Eliza Coulter. Thought the prairie carried you off. Not yet. I nodded at Winona. Need cartridges, 2 rifles if you got 'em on pawn. Payday's in lead, not silver. He eyed our worn coats, the hollowness beneath. Hard ride ahead? Harder if we go empty-handed. He rubbed his stubbled chin. Tahu once swallowed a bullet pulling me clear of Lakota arrows. Guess I owe. Take what you can pack. Winona shouldered a Winchester, worked the lever, metal clicking like distant thunder. Debt's a heavy thing, she said to him. Holloway shrugged. Lighter than regret. We left with rifles, a sack of shells, and 2 sticks of dynamite so old they sweated nitre. Death or deliverance in brown paper. Night settled over Red Rock, lamps throwing amber pools on muddy boards. We bunked in a loft above the livery, horses munching hay beneath. Rain drummed the roof, thunder rolled somewhere far. Winona lay awake, staring at rafters. Henderson's guards swap shifts at dawn. We got 2 days' ride to the canyon, maybe less if we push. I rolled the rifle cloth between my fingers. You sure it's just the 2 of us? You scared? Scared smart, I answered. 5 men know that canyon. We don't. We've got need on our side. She shut her eyes. Need can make cowards dangerous. Silence stretched. The smell of wet timber filled the darkness. After a long while, I whispered, Rose'll forgive me? She's your blood. Blood forgives what love can't fix. I wished I believed that. First light painted the mesas pink. We rode east, hooves kicking red dust. Conversation died quick. Breath was better spent on the climb. By midday, we reached Devil's Mouth, jagged rock teeth framing a gorge that vanished into shadow. Winona dismounted, eyes scanning ridges. Tracks, she muttered. 3 horses went in 2 nights past, came out heavy-loaded. Could be them. I knelt, touched the indent. They drag something. See that groove? Coach Strongbox, maybe. She pulled a coil of rope, tied the horses to a scrub juniper. Wind moaned through chimney rock, carrying a whiff of old campfire. Quiet from here, she said, unslinging her rifle. Echo travels. We slipped between boulders, boots crunching shale. Every gust set my nerves ringing. Somewhere above, a hawk screeched, wings carving the sky. A rifle crack shattered the hush. Rock puffed dust inches from Winona's head. She dove, rolled behind a pillar. Voice drifted down, lazy, mocking. Evenin', ladies. Marshall send you or are you huntin' for fun? Cogan's drawl, just like the poster said, smooth trouble. Winona yelled back, Sent by the devil himself. He wants his dogs home. Laughter echoed. Devil better pay double. We're pricey. I crawled to the edge, glassed the cliff with broken field lenses. 2 men dug in behind fallen slabs. The rest? Could be anywhere. Winona pointed to the dynamite. Her lips shaped, bluff them. My pulse hammered. I shouted, We got 2 sticks of hell powder and a mine to drop this canyon on your heads. Toss down your guns, come out slow. Silence. Then a mutter. Then the snick of rifles chambering. Winona's eyes flashed. Do it or retreat. Retreat meant Tahu rotting. I struck a match, touched fuse, counted to 2, lobbed the stick over the rim. Explosion ripped the gorge, echo stacking on echo. Dust billowed, rocks clattered. A scream cut short. When the smoke thinned, one outlaw limped into view, hand raised, face streaked bloody. He tossed his rifle, shouted, Don't shoot! Cogan's dead. We're done. Winona kept her bead. Throw the strongbox key. He pitched a brass key. It skittered to my boots. I locked him with a glare. Where's the rest? 2 bailed last night, took North Ridge. His voice cracked. I'm just the driver. She bound him, forced him to show the cash, a cedar crate half buried under tarps. Inside, blood-stained satchels of silver, a handful of gold eagles, and 5 neat rolls of $20 bills. More than enough to buy Henderson, his badge, and every judge he danced with. But money was heavy with ghosts. I shut the lid. Winona said quiet, Take what we need. Leave the rest for the dead. I met her gaze. Blood silver spends bad. Not today, she answered. Today it buys a father's freedom. We rode through the night, lantern slung low, prisoner tied to a mule. Storm clouds chased the moon, but my thoughts outran them. Rose's trembling voice, Tahu's calm eyes, Henderson's sneer when he set the price. By dawn, Red Rock's crooked skyline cut the horizon. Winona pulled up. You confront Henderson. I watch the back. I tightened the rope on our captive. You trust me to talk? You got the legend, remember? Make it roar. The livery yard was stirring, stable boy yawning, sheriff's mutt nosing scraps. I tethered the mule, marched our outlaw toward the jailhouse, gold-heavy saddlebags slung over my shoulder. Henderson lounged on the porch, polishing his Colt. He looked up, chuckled. Back already, Mrs. Coulter? Miss your man? I tossed the bag at his boots. It thunked, solid. 500 gold. Kogan gang's coach money. Got the driver, too. His eyes widened. You're bluffin'. Open it. He kicked the latch. Coins spilled like spilled sunlight. Greed flickered across his face. I'll take Tahu, I said, and you'll ride out before sunset. Otherwise, folks learn you're holding prisoners for ransom, not justice. The marshal wiped sweat. You threatening a badge, lady? I cocked the Winchester. Not threatening, bartering, like you taught me. Door creaked behind him, Winona pressing a shotgun to the deputy's spine. Clock's ticking, Marshal. Henderson weighed the money, the guns, the watching street. Finally he spat, Damn you both. Tahu stepped out moments later, wrists raw, eyes bright with relief and worry. He saw the gold, the bound driver, the trembling deputy. He shook his head. What did you trade for this? Only what was already stolen, I whispered. He touched my cheek, pride and pain mingling. Let's go home. We rode west with the sun at our backs, Henderson's curses fading. Winona's wound would scar, Tahu's wrists would bruise, Rose would dream new dreams. And me? I didn't feel like a legend. I felt like a storm spent, clouds broken by dawn. But storms leave water for seeds to grow. Hollow Creek waited, scared, scarred, but standing. We were bringing its heart back, and maybe that was enough. We shadowed the Kogan camp from the rim, bellies hugging sandstone and hearts kicking like jackrabbits. Below, 5 men lazed around a dying fire, whiskey glow, saddles for pillows, rifles propped close but not close enough. Winona whispered, Leftmost's dozing, light step and he's done. I tasted dust. Pick the one at the kettle. He wakes first. You trust my knife? I trust the woman holding it. A tiny grin twitched on her lips, gone as quick as it came. We scooted back, lit our diversion, a fistful of pine pitch and greasy cloth tucked under a lone juniper. Spark, hiss, orange bloom, smoke clawed into the night, shouts rose in camp. Fire on the ridge! Get the buckets! Boots thundered toward the glow. Winona vanished, silent as regret. I knocked an arrow, breath thin. One outlaw peeled off, lagging behind, sentry instincts late to the party. Winona slid behind him, pommel cracked skull. He crumpled without a sigh, but another turned, saw the dark shape falling. Jack? Hell? He raised his Winchester. I loosed. Arrow hissed past his ear, missed but panic flared. He fired wild, muzzle flash lit cedar ghosts. Lead sang over my shoulder. I broke cover, sprinted down slope. Gravel slid, lungs burned, dropped bow, yanked Tahu's old Colt. Hammer cocked. The shooter growled, Got you now, witch. Gunshot slapped the night mine. His knee exploded, scream ripping canyon stillness. He toppled into yucca. Footsteps behind, another brute barreling. He tackled me hard, air fled my chest. Knife glinted. I smelled rotgut and sweat. We rolled, trading elbows, curses. His blade kissed my ribs, just cloth. I clawed for anything and found a rock, cracked his temple once, twice. He sagged heavy. Off to the right, Winona danced with two at once, steel flashing lunar. One swung a club. She ducked, sliced calf, rose, buried blade in his flank. Other rushed. She twisted, took the momentum, slammed him into a cottonwood. Bark split, lungs too. I wheezed, reloaded. Winona, duck! She dropped. I fired over her, caught Clubman's shoulder. He spun, screaming. Then a voice boomed from the dark. Hold it! Rifles cracked from the ridge, sharp, deliberate. Old prospector Tom Crane stepped into the lantern spill, 5 miners at his flank. Tom spat. Hard men beating on women, shameful waste of bullets. Another volley barked. The last outlaw threw up hands, bleeding from a graze. Silence rushed back, broken only by a distant coyote wondering what fool interrupted supper. Tom tipped hat. Figured you two'd stir trouble. Thought we'd tag along, rescue you from your own guts. I wiped blood from lip. Right on time, Tom. Winona kicked the wounded man's rifle away. Strip their cartridges. Anyone moves, he joins the coyotes. We hog-tied survivors, stacked corpses, then dug through their gear. Under a tarp, iron strongbox, Wells Fargo seal cracked. Inside, rolled banknotes, coin sacks stamped U.S. Mint, a velvet pouch of Mexican gold. Tom whistled. That'll buy half of Kansas. Buys freedom first, I said, snapping the lid. Dawn bled over Red Rock as we dragged 3 prisoners behind pack mules. Main Street froze, miners, gamblers, barkeeps staring like the dead had walked in. Winona dismounted first, voice ringing. Kogan gang delivered. She yanked a captive down, jammed him to his knees. Alive, mostly. I strode ahead, saddlebag clinking, boots loud on the boards. Henderson stood on the jail porch, coffee halfway to his mouth, his jaw unhinged. Morning, Marshal. I hurled the bag at his boots, coins spilled bright as sunrise. 500 gold, double what you asked, and the men who earned it. Townfolk edged closer. Murmurs, she brought them in? 2 women did that? Legends real. Henderson swallowed, eyes darting, calculating if pride outweighed greed. Mighty charitable of you, Mrs. Coulter. Not charity, payment. I cocked the Colt, aimed lazy at his belt buckle. Unlock Tahu. Now. Deputy twitched toward his rifle. Tom's men raised theirs quicker. Henderson's fingers twitched. Greed won. He fished keys, stomped inside. Moments later, Tahu stepped out, wrists raw but spine straight. His eyes found mine, storm and sunrise mixed. He spoke low. Thought you'd keep low till smoke cleared. Turns out I don't hide well. Winona approached, blood-specked blouse stiff. She tried for tough, but her voice cracked. Took a few lessons from you. He pulled her close, kissed her hair. No words, just breath. Henderson hovered, forced polite. Transaction fulfilled. I'll file release papers. I holstered the Colt. File this too. Red Rock doesn't ransom innocent men anymore. Behind him, townsfolk nodded, new myth writing itself on their faces. We rested in Crane's shack outside town. Tahu cleansed Winona's wound, mixed willow bark, wrapped cotton bandage. He glanced at me over the lamplight. You spent blood for me. Spent theirs, I said, jerking a thumb at the shackled outlaws on the porch. Ours was voluntary. He smiled, tired, proud. What did it cost you inside? I sat, suddenly heavy. Cost me believing peace could be had without teeth. He set the salve aside, took my hand. Peace is guarded, not given. Winona sipped coffee, winced at the burn. We keep guard together then. Tom chuckled from his cot. Reckon Hollow Creek just got itself a militia. I stared into the lamp flame, thought of Rose waiting, her dreams, her quiet strength. No, not militia. I met their eyes one by one. A family that bites back. Outside, dawn fully cracked, the world smelling of gunpowder, coffee, and possibility. Henderson's badge might survive another day, Matthew's hate might still roam the plains, but so did we, scarred, stubborn, unbroken. And in a country that measured worth by how long you could stand against the wind, that felt like victory enough, for now. The road home was longer than it ought to have been, not by miles, but by weight. Dust clung to our boots, and blood, some dried, some ours, still marked our sleeves. But the silence between me and Winona wasn't jagged anymore. It held something else, something earned. She didn't say much, not at first. Just rode with her chin lifted, eyes scanning the horizon like always. But there was a softness now in the way she looked at me, like the edges of her grief had been sanded down by truth. Truth and war. Tehu rode close, his horse keeping stride with ours, the sun catching the silver in his hair. I caught him glancing at Winona more than once, quiet pride behind that weathered face. She caught it too, and every so often she'd smile, not wide, not giddy, just enough. Enough to say we made it. "You all right?" I asked her as we crossed the last ridge before Hollow Creek. She nodded. "Better than I've been in years." A beat. I didn't think I'd make it back alive. I gave her a sidelong look. Neither did I. Another pause. "But I'm damn glad we did." Her mouth twitched. "Don't get all sentimental." "Wouldn't dream of it." Tahu chuckled. "You two sound like sisters." Winona snorted. "That mean you're adopting her now?" He didn't answer. Just smiled, slow and sure, like the sunrise over the plains. When the trees opened up and the first rooftops of Hollow Creek came into view, the air changed. Kids ran out first, barefoot, hollering, kicking up dust. Then the rest came. Martha, tears streaking down her cheeks. Tom limping with that busted leg, waving his hat. Even the horses picked up speed, sensing the welcome. Rose barreled toward us like a bullet. I barely got down before she hit me, arms tight around my waist. "I knew you'd come back, Mama. I saw it in my sleep." I held her, burying my face in her tangled hair. "You were right, baby. You were right." Tahu dismounted slow, steady. Winona met him halfway, didn't hesitate. She wrapped her arms around him, forehead pressed to his chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have believed in you from the start." "You did," he said. "You just didn't know it yet." The crowd closed in. Cheers, backslaps, embraces. Silas stood near the edge, his face pale. He didn't speak, just tipped his hat toward me, eyes low. That was enough. I didn't need an apology. I'd survived men like him before. Later, when the sun dipped behind the trees and firelight flickered through the clearing, someone passed a jug of cider around and someone else picked up a fiddle. For the first time in months, laughter outlasted the dark. I sat beside Tahu, Rose asleep in my lap, and watched Winona dance barefoot through the grass with the younger folk, her shadow long and light again. Not healed, none of us were, but healing. I leaned into Tahu. "Think this place can hold?" His voice was low but sure. "It will now. You gave 'em something to believe in again." I looked around at the faces, the ones who'd doubted, the ones who'd fought, the ones who'd stayed. Maybe he was right. Maybe survival wasn't just about living through the fire. Maybe it was what you lit after. And in Hollow Creek that night, the fire was ours. Life settled into a more peaceful rhythm. Rose, now on the cusp of womanhood, continued to have her strange dreams, but they were less frequent, less dark. She was growing into a remarkable young woman, with my spirit and Tahu's quiet wisdom. She and Winona, surprisingly, developed a close bond, like sisters. Winona taught Rose the old Sioux songs and stories, and Rose, in turn, shared her own unique way of seeing the world. One evening, as a chill autumn wind whispered through the pines, Winona and I were sitting by the fire, mending clothes. Tahu and Rose were out checking snares. We had fallen into a comfortable silence, a common occurrence now. Then Winona spoke, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Eliza, there's something I need to tell you. Something Tahu doesn't know I remember so clearly. I looked at her, a sense of unease prickling my skin. What is it, Winona? She took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the dancing flames. Tahu. He's the only father I've ever known. He saved my life. He raised me. But he is not my blood father. I stared at her, stunned into silence. My mother, Winona continued, her voice trembling slightly. She was a white woman, like you. Her family was traveling west on a wagon train. Soldiers, renegade soldiers, attacked them. They did terrible things to the women. Her voice broke, and she paused, struggling for composure. My heart ached for the pain in her words, for the horror her mother must have endured. My mother was left for dead, but she survived, long enough to have me. She died in a small hidden village of Sioux who had taken her in. I was just a baby. Tahu. He was a young warrior then. His own wife and child had been lost not long before, in another raid. He found me. My mother, before she died, she begged him to look after me, to not let me suffer the fate of an unwanted half-breed child. He promised her he would. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't try to wipe them away. He kept his promise. He took me as his own. He gave me his name, his protection, his love. He never told anyone I wasn't his blood. He shielded me from the whispers, from the cruelty of a world that would have seen me as nothing. She looked at me then, her eyes filled with a profound, heartbreaking understanding. All those years, I was so angry. I thought he'd forgotten my mother, his real family. When he brought you here, another white woman, I thought you were replacing her, replacing me. I was so afraid of losing him, the only person who had ever truly chosen me, loved me unconditionally. She reached out and hesitantly took my hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was firm. He chose to love me, Eliza. Just as he chose to love you, to love Rose. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. Choice does. He taught me that, even when I was too blind with my own pain to see it. I couldn't speak. My own tears were flowing freely now. All this time, Tahu had carried this secret, this burden, protecting Winona, loving her with a fierceness that transcended blood. And Winona, her bitterness, her anger, it all made a terrible, heartbreaking sense. He is the best man I have ever known, Winona whispered, her voice thick with emotion. And you are strong, Eliza. You understand what it means to fight for family. I was wrong to hate you. That night, something profound shifted within me. The last vestiges of resentment, of feeling like an outsider, dissolved. We were a family, Tahu, Winona, Rose, and I. A strange patchwork family, forged in hardship, bound by love and loss, and an unshakable loyalty. A family made not by who breaks you, but by who stays, by who chooses to love you, fiercely and without reservation. Years passed. Hollow Creek thrived, a beacon of quiet resilience in a harsh world. Rose grew into a woman, her strange gift of sight a respected part of who she was, her spirit as free as the wind. Winona became a leader in our community, wise and compassionate, her past pain transformed into a deep understanding of human suffering. Tahu and I grew old together, our love a quiet, steady flame that warmed our later years. Sometimes travelers would pass through, carrying an old, tattered leaflet with my picture on it, asking if the legend of the warrior woman was true. I'd usually just smile and offer them a seat by the fire. One evening, a young girl, her eyes wide with questions, asked me, just as others had before, "Is it really true, what you did? All those things they say in the stories?" I looked at her, then at Tahu, his hand resting gently on mine, at Winona, sharing a quiet laugh with Rose across the fire. And I finally found the words. "Some of it is true, child," I said, my voice softer now, weathered by time. It's true I was broken once, that a man tried to bury me and the world turned its back. It's true I fought and bled and lost almost everything. The girl leaned closer. But how did you survive? How did you become a legend? I smiled. I'm no legend, sweetheart. I survived because I had to, because of love and sheer, bone-deep stubbornness. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who choose to stay. The fire cracked softly between us. Outside, the wind carried the scent of pine and ash. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not an ending, but a beginning. The storm had passed, and we were still standing, still writing our story.